Hey folks, welcome to the very first episode of Beyond the Hype, a show that looks at the hype machine in the video game industry and asks, was this really worth it? My name is Nick Branson, and get excited, or maybe even hyped, for the inaugural episode of Beyond the Hype. Wait, I gotta do something real quick. Right. Now, look at that, already delivering on promises. Everything from here on out is just a bonus then. Now, overhyping is almost an industry standard in video games at this point, like crunch time, driving employees into manic states, or sexism, all the way back to John Romero threatening us with sexual violence and Duke Nukem being the longest awaited poop and fart joke, to even more recently with Cyberpunk 2077 delays and employee crunch time, but it wasn't crunch time, but yes it was crunch time, to no, the employees agreed it wasn't crunch time, to shut up, yes it was crunch time, But hey, it was all worth it, just so you can customize your character's genitals so that every NPC in the city can see since your pants bugged out and now you're just Donald Ducking it through a dystopian future. But instead of focusing on bug-riddled messes and sexual deviancy, I want to talk about a different type of game that went through the hype machine and came out the other end. Let's talk about 2019's premier game from one of the industry's most iconic developers, Hideo Kojima's Death Stranding. The Sony E3 conference of 2016 was a banger of an event, a packed showcase with announcements left and right. There was the first official word of the PlayStation 4 exclusive Spider-Man game, biker zombie horde survival Days Gone, which could possibly see its own episode on here in the future, and the announcement of the long-awaited return to the God of War franchise, which could be its own episode, but it would be the shortest episode ever. Actually, screw it. Hey gang, Beyond the Hype, 2018's God of War. Very hype. Worth it? Yes it was. Great game. Everyone loved it. Except people who hate good things. They suck. That's the episode. Crap, wait, does this count as an episode? Alright, I gotta do something real quick. Stop being so excited with that. I'm going to break my desk here. Alright, back to 2016 E3. One of the biggest announcements of the night was the triumphant return of Hideo Kojima and the reveal of his newest title, Death Stranding. Now it is important to point out that a year before Hideo Kojima had left Konami, his prior company, after a bizarre and toxic corporate conflict. Kojima Productions were responsible for many of the games in the Metal Gear Solid series, including the newest title, Metal Gear Solid: The Phantom Pain. Kojima Productions had been placed as a restricted subsidiary under the Konami Publishing. Konami at this time was going through something of a radicalized employee renaissance. And by renaissance, I mean utter insanity that would make the most rear-grabbing corporate fat cat drop his monocle into the nearest glass of champagne. Apparently this was written by somebody who wrote for Looney Tunes back in the 40s. While I don't have time to get into everything, the insanity ranges from such tomfoolery as tracking how long an employee uses the bathroom, for purely non-sexual reasons maybe, probably, to taking vital game development personnel and switching them over to slot machine development. They even went so far down the vindictive path to getting them denied health insurance at other places they went to work. After corporate restructuring saw the removal of Kojima's name from Metal Gear Solid: Phantom Pain, they even went further and denied him from the Game Awards of 2015, in which the title won Best Action-Adventure Game and Best Soundtrack. All these things were very public at the time, so when fans of Kojima saw him descend a lighted staircase at the Sony conference and announce, "I'm back," people were overjoyed and glad to see the game developer return even after his short disappearance. Death Stranding trailer at E3 immediately gained the attention of gamers with its vague but attention-grabbing cinematic. It featured a naked Norman Reedus waking up on a beach with a baby pulling a Houdini, and an ominous group of shadowy figures watching in the distance. Fans picked over every bit of the trailer looking for every little bit of info they could grab as to wildly speculate what in the living hell this game could be about. This is the start of the hype that would last over the next 3 years. Now, when a game is announced without a release date, it is assumed that the title is a bit away. Death Stranding was already an ambitious project with plenty of star power to it. Later trailers would add additional characters voiced in mocap by talent such as Guillermo del Toro, Lea Seydoux, Lindsay Wagner, and of course Troy Baker. because I do not think you can make a AAA title without having Troy Baker in it. See, Nolan North, you let Troy Baker in one Uncharted game and he starts stealing all your work. At least you still had Avengers, buddy. Star power notwithstanding, a video game voice actor strike took place between 2016 and 2017. I will spare the gritty details, but 11 different American video game developers and publishers were cited over failed renegotiation terms. And not to be catty, but our good old buddies at Activision are one of those 11 companies. Just goes to show you, you smell crap somewhere but not sure where it's coming from? Check Activision's pants. Probably their hands, too. The strike did slow down work on the game for a bit, and so a new trailer was not available at the following E3. However, 1 year after he was banned from accepting his award at the VGAs, Hideo returned to show off the second trailer for Death Stranding, this time showing Guillermo del Toro hiding in a sewer of what appears to be a World War II-era war-torn village. He is carrying a baby in a tube when skeletons and army fatigues appear under the control of Hannibal himself, Mads Mikkelsen. Anytime anything in this game is summarized, it sounds like a fever dream of someone who was in the MK Ultra project. Speaking of Mads Mikkelsen, listen, the guy is extremely talented, he's an extremely handsome guy, but he's on that level, like, if you were to take a line of intimidating actors, on one end you have John Hamm, again, talented and handsome, and then on the other end, of just Mads Mikkelsen. The guy just stares into your soul. Like if you were walking your dog somewhere and you had to stop into a store and John Hamm was outside, you could be like, hey, could you watch this dog? And you come back out and the dog would be like better trained and know some new tricks. And then, but if like Mads Mikkelsen was out there, you'd walk out and he'd be unhinging his jaw and just swallowing that corgi whole. I think that's a German folklore somewhere. Yeah. Anyway, information between the trailers had been sparse at that time. However, this turned out to be a smart move by Hideo Kojima. Instead of promising features in a game that was not complete and therefore not guaranteed, he chose to release out-of-context trailers with the sole purpose of people on the internet combing through each video frame by frame to find any little bit of story or meaning. And boy howdy did they do that. Thousands of videos on YouTube, Reddit posts, Tumblr blogs, whole groups of people working together to decipher this madman's new project. Discovery of things like equations for string theories, quantum mechanics, black holes, and plenty of alludes towards lofty science ideas and complex mathematical equations. People were even theorizing that Death Stranding was a true sequel to PT, released by Kojima on the PlayStation 4 that was actually for the scrap Silent Hills project, and honestly one of the scariest games I've ever played. 1 year later, another trailer would be shown off at the VGAs, and if that last description seemed bonkers, strap in because it gets weirder. The trailer, this time, features the return of Norman Reedus' character, who we now know is named Sam Porter Bridges. The cinematic this time introduces a mechanic of the game called timefall, which is rain that when it comes into contact with things causes it to rapidly age and decay. Sam, along with two other porters, yeah, Sam is a porter, apparently your name is your job in this world, are stuck in timefall and in protective suits by an overturned truck. One of the men stuck under the truck notices handprints showing up in the mud around them. Then a dude in a gold mask floats down and makes a quiet sound towards the men with his hands. Then one of the guys starts getting hit with timefall. He screams, and the invisible hand thing starts pulling him into the ground, which is oil now. Then a big weird oil giant is in the background. The other guy in the trio, who isn't Sam, tries to shoot himself in the head and somehow screws that up. He is pulled into the air into a giant oil monster, and then everything blows up. Sam, naked again, falls into water and sees a weird hand creature floating around and an upside-down whale. Then zoom into Sam's mouth, a baby gives you a thumbs up, and Sam then wakes up in a crater. And we once again see 5 mysterious shadow figures floating in the distance. Cue title card, fanboys collectively and confusingly crap their pants. Speaking of which, I sunk probably about 100 hours into this game. I still don't know what that whale is for. That's still, saying it out loud just still confuses me. Flash forward to 2018 E3 at the Sony press conference, and we finally get to see gameplay for Death Stranding. And this is one of the few times the hype train was threatened to derail. The trailer flipped between gameplay and more cinematics, and also showed off Léa Seydoux's character, Fragile. While the cutscenes offered little in the way of more concrete info, it was the gameplay that had people worried. Gameplay showed Sam walking through various mountainous regions with a varying amount of packages strapped to any little bit of area they could be. People worried that this wildly ambitious title would be little more than a walking simulator, a moniker given to story-heavy games that offer little to no gameplay at all. Still, fans of Kojima and Death Stranding held excitement for the game, and again dove into every little bit of information they could get out of the trailer. Between the Sony conference in 2018 and the eventual release of the game in November 2019, more trailers and information on the game was released, and a vague idea of what the game was about was starting to come to light. Basically, and trying to sum up this game is like listening to a toddler describe his best friend in a horror movie, a thing called the Death Stranding happened, which was caused by them discovering the super fast version of the internet. That was kind of the reason. I don't want to get into spoilers. Then ghost-like things called BTs, beach things called such things, because the area where the super fast internet is the beach. It's a beach. It's a weird looking beach. Apparently it's different for everybody else, but they only ever showed a beach. The ghost thing started showing up along with the timefall, and now when people die, they blow up if one of the BTs, beach things, gets them. Also, some jerk nukes a city. That jerk's name is Troy Baker, whose character is named Higgs, like the Higgs boson. Listen, I agree that Hideo Kojima is a genius, but sometimes he's as heavy-handed as a drunken southern stepdad. So that brings us to November 8th, 2019, the release of Death Stranding. The game came out to largely positive reviews, with people citing the graphics and the story-driven narrative, with some complaints regarding the overly complicated UI and lack of intense action sequences. The game has a Metacritic score of 82 out of 100 and a user score of 7.3 out of 10, and no, I don't know why one is out of 100 and the other is out of 10. A couple of publications did have some problems with the game, mainly Giant Bomb and IGN, of all people. I didn't think IGN gave bad reviews. Anyway, IGN said the game was a series of glorified fetch quests, and taking Sam for a short walk up a slight hill feels more like trying to push a wheelbarrow full of bricks up a flight of stairs, which I am willing to put money on the table that most people at IGN don't know what it's like to push a wheelbarrow anywhere, let alone it being filled with anything. One more dunk on IGN, then I'll move on. I can understand a game like Death Stranding being foreign to IGN. Their fan base is a bunch of Mountain Dewed up 13-year-olds or adult men with the mentality of 13-year-olds who have the attention span of a cocaine-addled squirrel who owes money to some very dangerous people. Probably waiting on the loading screen caused them to chew through a table leg, then jump back on Call of Duty to spew ethnic slurs. Giant Bomb gave the game 2 out of 5 stars, and based on the vitriol of the review, I can assume that the author's body pillow left him for another person whilst he was playing it. The reviewer said this game has more in common with something like the truck simulator games than your standard third-person action game, and that a deep thread of insecurity runs through it. I would assume Giant Bomb employees know what insecurity looks like. It probably looks like the reviewers at Giant Bomb, which all seem to be in a competition as to who is the most nondescript white male, and they are all winning. Okay, one more. Giant Bomb, if you own 3 Silk Dragon shirts, you'd work here already. You can cross that one off. Yeah, gonna have to cross that one off. Really banking on that third one there. One day. Probably not while I'm making YouTube videos, though. Alright. It's easy to make fun of bad reviewers, especially if they work at Giant Bomb, but let's focus on the good things people said about the game, which seem to far outnumber the bad. MMORPG.com highlighted the Decima engine, the same engine used in the Horizon Zero Dawn game, which is one of my all-time favorite titles ever. They went on to say the landscape has an ultra-realistic quality about it on both the micro and macro levels. The vistas are absolutely stunning to behold, but the same level of beauty and detail hold up when viewed up close. The reviewer then talks about how cool the rocks looked, and guess what? He's not wrong! Look at these beautiful rocks! GameWatcher.com praised the pacing of the game. At the start of the game, you are only carrying crates from A to B. 30 minutes and several amazing cutscenes after, you're building mailboxes in the wild. 10 hours after that, you're building bridges and driving bikes and using weapons. I didn't even know the game had combat until 3 hours into the campaign. As a result, what seems like a walking simulator very quickly becomes something magical and extremely broad in scope. That is true. The first combat you have in the game, you basically just belt some weird psychopath with a briefcase you're carrying. The big thing that seemed to separate the people who loved the game and those who didn't was the measure of patience within a person. I can say about myself that I am not a very patient person. Couple that with the game coming out during an already overpacked holiday season, it was tough to find the time to sit in a world where all I was doing was delivering packages and falling down hills. Like seriously, all the hills. If there were 5 hills in the game, I fell down 7 of them. Falling down hills in the game is a standard, and watching a long-haired, greasy Norman Reedus stumble over a small stone and getting a face full of gravel for 20 feet downhill does not seem like a fun time. Sorry, Norman, I didn't mean to call you greasy. You're not watching this video, but I just, between this game, Walking Dead, and Boondock Saints, it's like, just get a little dab. Just get a little dab there. Especially considering other titles were offering mental powers with shape-shifting guns. Being able to basically run my own ragtag crew of space goobers, get murdered over and over again by samurais riding on bulls, or go play a game that came out 15 years ago because of peer pressure. About 6 different times that I boot up the game, start off towards a destination, and then proceed to comically fall down a hill because I had just a hair too much pack strapped to my back, or I just completely forgot about a package back at the center and had to trek all the way through touchy ghost territory and more of that GDF and timefall. However, I'm glad I stuck with it, because while a lot of things can be said about the game, the thing I took away the most from it was that falling down is the most important part. Death Stranding, like other games, has mechanics in it that allow you to keep playing even after you die. While other games offer checkpoints that drop you right back into the room before the action starts, Death Stranding, Sam is a repatriate. While the actual definition is someone who is sent back to their home country, in Death Stranding world, it is someone who is sent back to life after you die. After a brief underwater moment where you search for your body, you wake back up where you bit the dust, having to collect all up your things so you can finish your journey. These moments are some of the most important in the game. They make you ask, why did I fall? And what can I do to keep that from happening again? Sometimes the answer is to take a different path, and sometimes it is to utilize your tools and equipment better. And this brings us to one of the best features of Death Stranding, the multiplayer. Now keep in mind, Metal Gear Solid is regarded as the first stealth action adventure game. It created a genre that saw many beloved titles fill the ranks in the years afterwards, from Dishonored to Deus Ex, to early Assassin's Creed titles, and to Splinter Cell. Not that we've seen a new Splinter Cell in 7 years. Jesus, Ubisoft, you release 20 games a year. You can't skip out on one Ghost Recon to put Sam Fisher back in the limelight. Regardless, with Kojima getting independence once again, he sought to create something new. With the announcement of Death Stranding, Kojima talked about the short story called Nawa by Kobo Abe. In the story, Abe talks about the first 2 inventions of humanity, the stick and the rope. Speaking to IGN, don't worry, won't pick on them again, Kojima said this of Abe's work. The stick is the first tool that mankind created to put distance between himself and bad things, to protect himself. The second tool mankind created is rope. A rope is a tool used to secure things that are important to you. Most of your tools in action games are sticks. You punch, or you shoot, or you kick. The communication is always through sticks. I want people to be connected not through sticks, but through what would be the equivalent of ropes. Death Stranding's multiplayer does not allow you to team up with other players to traverse areas together. As much fun as that sounds, it would defeat the central theme to the game, solitude and introspection. Sam doesn't like being around or being touched by others. However, the effects of you and other players still reverberate into the world you are in. The central theme of ropes is represented exhaustively with the gameplay of Sam traveling to other hubs to connect them to the chiral network, a super advanced internet, and connecting people back into the grid so they can share information and knowledge with the rest of the world. However, every road you help build, every zip line, ladder, climbing rope, vehicle, rest stop, post box, and even the little things like signs that encourage people to keep going all show up in someone else's game. The road you dumped a lot of resources into and only got halfway built, well, next time you log in, other people have contributed enough to have it finished. That zipline path you made that almost connected you to Central Knot City, while you were at work, someone came in and added more. Now it connects to the city and the 2 outposts near it. The ropes or strands that we initially make so our journey is easier also connect us to others. Sam's journey in the game is to reconnect the world, but there would be no point in that if you did not leave the world better than when you found it. Kojima has found a way for us to connect to each other even in solitude, because even if you've got enough gear and leveled enough to not fall down hills anymore, that does not mean that the person starting the journey hasn't. And when that porter picks themselves up and collects the assorted packages they dropped and debates whether or not this journey is even worth it, they will look to the horizon and see the infrastructure you and others built. While the path you take is lonely, it does let others follow you until they are ready to create their own paths for others to follow. Death Stranding, from its announcement, offered a mystery for players to chase. Then the game itself offered introspection into ourselves and wrapped it up in a story that showed a splintered society band together behind a man who wanted nothing to do with it. From twists and turns to the story, to the feeling of accomplishment of creating a stable route to get deliveries done easier, to knowing the hard work you put in is being used and appreciated by others. Death Stranding is a game that sees chaos and asks you to bring order in it, but in your own way. Death Stranding asks you to look at death and then challenges you to see the beauty in it. Was the hype worth it? Yes. 1,000,000 times yes. I hope you guys enjoyed our first episode of Beyond the Hype. Really had fun making it. Really learning a lot about doing this whole video editing thing. It's been a really fun process so far. Check out our other videos here on Ursine Panzer. Check out all our social medias are in the link of this video. Go give us a like, follow, everything like that, and tell your friends about us too. Anyway, that's the show, and I'm gonna let you guys decide if I go throw a trash can at my brother. You said yes, okay, we're gonna go throw it. Bye bye.
I didn't agree to this.